Can I just have confirmation that we are live streamed, please? Thank you. I've got that confirmation now. So we'll go straight over to apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies this morning from Councillor Fairley and from Councillor Steady. There were no substitutes appointed today.
Thank you for that. The item 2 on your agenda is minutes of the last meeting. I just want to make a comment on the minutes of the last meeting. That's with regards to page 5. There's an entry there which says the questions posed to Mr. White. My view is that those questions were so germane to what was being discussed, they should have been included in the minutes, but they weren't. It's unfortunate, but I just want to make that point. Other than that, are we agreed that they are a correct record of those minutes?
Chair, are you saying they're a correct record? You want them added as an addendum?
I don't think we've got. I don't think we've got the ability to accurately recall what was said now. So I think we'll move on. We'll accept those minutes as true record. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, pecuniary or personal, that any member wishes to declare? No, there are not. Thank you very much. Ian, if I can ask you, are there any questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, we go straight on to agenda item 5, report of the internal audit manager, and straight over to Craig to introduce that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As we've got a few guests here, should we allow them to present about an update on Careline and Career Track from the last meeting?
Okay. Before we get to that, I just got a couple of questions in your report, or regarding your report, if I could mention those first of all, and then we go over to housing repairs and maintenance, Careline and Career Track, and discuss those then. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. So first of all, Craig, can I just discuss our establishment, page 15 of your report? We're still low on establishment as internal audit, and I just wondered, you stated in there that we have advertised unsuccessfully. Can you just tell me where we advertised?
Yes, so we've advertised both internal on the first round, and then on the second round we went external. And our external advertising was on our website, it was on social media, it was on LinkedIn. So we hadn't used any of the mainstream recruitment companies. They're quite expensive to do so. So one of the things that we're going to try and do this time around is we're going to try and get an apprentice this time around and grow our own. So we've not had much luck in the recruitment side, and I think that's across the board in all areas. It's not just the audit industry. So I think we're going to go back to trying to grow our own and work with other councils, because we're all having the same problem. We all can't recruit to the audit area. So we're looking at a way that we can try and get the best possible candidates as we can.
Yeah, that's great. In terms of the current establishment that we have, is that adequate for you to carry out the audits that you need to?
It is. I mean, we've been doing it for some time now. It's a push because we don't have that support there with the accounting technician officer who would help with our admin work. But we've been doing it. We're still providing that assurance in the year, so I'm not too concerned at the moment that we won't be able to still deliver the plan.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Any questions for Craig on that particular item?
Chair.
Yes, Morris.
Good morning. You said that to go out into a larger field of advertising would be expensive, but surely the cost of going into these areas, we use consultants for all kinds of things. I believe CareerTrack is one of the ones that just use a consultant. And do you not think that the balance where you pay to get a top rate recruitment service may be expensive, but what about not having it? It appears from what you were saying, Craig, that there is a shortfall in your staff, and that must cause stress upon everyone. Do you not think, on balance, it may be preferable to invest the money on this occasion and to see if you can fill those vacant spots?
Yeah, I completely. That is the thought process that we've been going through, and the post that we have vacant is essentially an entry-level training post. So whoever we get in, we're going to have to train anyway. So that was part of the thought process. Do we pay the money for advertising and still not entirely be sure of who we're going to get? Or do we try again with the apprenticeship program, which we've had some success with in the past, to then do it that way and still train them in the way that was part of the sort of thought process around that. We have thought about that, but it's because of the post itself, it is a training post. We're still going to have to go through that whole process anyway.
I think there's a general shortage of staff in this area right across the area, isn't there? And it's always been a problem actually recruiting and retraining staff for these functions. And we have been very successful in growing our own over the years. So this may be the answer to that. Delith, sorry, did you want to come in?
Sorry, it's quite a complex track, but it's obviously a passion of mine because it's my history for nearly 40 years. And are we having difficulty recruiting staff to find the placements, the trainee placements? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying, because sorry, even blinking ears are blocked, I think. Are you saying it's recruiting trainees into those posts is the problem? So it's a shame, really, because coming from my background, I would advocate that people become your trainees very often in preference to going to a college course which might not lead to the outcome that I passionately believe you can.
Recommendations we made, I can't comment on that side, but some of the issues from the individual areas that we would have looked at in the past, they're long-standing things. So some of the recommendations that have been made, they're things that they take time to implement, and they have a big impact on culture, on change, on the area, and so that's what it's a journey, I guess. It's something that the services have to go through and work together on, because a lot of the recommendations were about collaborating and working together and following the same processes, which they weren't always used to. So in terms of have they done what through that they're working on it, I know we're working with them to try and achieve them. So at an operational level, we wouldn't raise here because they're going through now, and I think with Damien here, he can give us more of an update on what they've done so far. And the issue that we're raising today, and what we saw as more of a significant one of all of them, was about the stock take process and the fact that fit for purpose at the moment, and that we need to try and work out exactly how or the best way of doing that. And that's we've made some recommendations to the service, and they need to sort of make a decision and a judgment on what the best way is going to be, what best thing for them is going to be.
Okay. You say in your report that the ad hoc stock take uncovered a few discrepancies. Do you know how many is a few, and what was the failure percentage of those checked?
I don't have those figures in front of me. I can get those.
I suppose what I'm asking is, were those failings, really significant, or although important, not terribly significant?
So the failings that we identified, they weren't hugely significant, but what they identified was there's a potential that it could be. So without the right processes in place, it could get worse without the right level of monitoring and reviews. So, and that's kind of what we're highlighting here, is that we didn't necessarily find any really significant issues where huge equipment was missing, but we've identified that certain things could be. So we need to make sure that those controls are in place to make sure that it just cannot happen.
I mean, it's maybe a question for Damien more than yourself, I don't know, but the report says that a lack of resources is provided as the main reason for the lack of stock takes. So has that changed? Have we identified that lack of resource?
That's part of a future restructure will look to address some of those issues. If do you want me to go into the previous audit so I can just explain the whole principle?
No, I mean, Craig has said that there is a journey. From our perspective as audit, we just need to assure ourselves that if we're going on a journey, that people are actually on the bus.
Yes, so, I can absolutely assure you that people are on that bus. What we did as part of addressing these various issues that have arisen is that we brought part of the restructure forward. So we now have a post that sits under the business manager, whose role is ostensibly to make sure that the day-to-day business as usual functions are happening within Northbourne Depot. And we've obviously, one of the significant issues in addressing these is a computer software system that does the things we want it to do.
Oh, right.
And as part of that, this role is focusing at the moment on exactly that. So we're busy reviewing different types of software. We're actually going for a visit to a London borough on Monday to look at one of them that's fully operational, so that we can be comfortable that the one that we select will do all the things that we want, but also address all those issues that have been brought up in the audits. And Craig is right, this is a journey, and we are moving forward. From recollection, it wasn't so much of things going missing, but the potential. And it's the ability to address that potential, so you remove that risk. And then once you remove the risk, we can all be comfortable that things are happening properly.
The risk of what could happen.
Absolutely.
And that's why we got to address. Just on that point, you've got any points?
Yes, I have, yes. I believe there's a historic problem here as well, leading up to where we are now. How far into engaging with the new system we spoke of some time ago on keeping accurate records and knowing what's in stock? Where are we with that just now, please?
So we've been carrying out, thank you, Councillor. We've been carrying out that review since the last audit. So we're in a position where early October, we'll make a decision as to which software package we believe is appropriate, all of our permissions in place. And obviously we'll start rolling that out as soon as we have those things in place. At the moment, in our minds, we've got a start date of early January of 23 as a point where the system would go live. It takes a long while to integrate systems and data and all those sorts of things. But as I said, we're off on Monday, and this will be the final part of that review. And I'm actually going as well, because I want to be assured that the system that the team are selecting actually does all those things that it says on the tin.
Supplementary, please, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Damien. Look, I take on board exactly what you're saying, but wherever you go within this, you're going to have human interaction. They're going to be a very vital part of this. And if what's historically been done in the past overlaps with what's happening now, that I think is where the real risk comes in. Are you getting that engagement that we can move on? So we, at the end in your October figure, that we will go forward.
Yes, we are. Absolutely, we are. Staff are engaged in the system. We've got staff not just from the service, but from other areas. We have IT involved, we have audit involved, so that we can ensure the checks and balances are in place. But probably importantly, the staff are on board as well. The staff that will be using the software are involved as part of the selection process. So it's not a surprise. And as far as some of the historical elements, they'll be addressed with a new installation. So the issues the previous installation may not have been 100% correct. That'll be dealt with as we move through and install a new system. So I'm confident.
That's a good point. Yeah, thanks very much. Right. Any other questions for Damien on depot operations or Craig? I think we'll move on then. Page 17 of Craig's report also mentions Careline and Career Track, but we'll deal with that later, if that's all right. But we will talk about housing repairs and maintenance, again with Damien present. That's very useful. Again, financial and reputational risk identified from the audit. I've already said the questions asked at our previous meeting were not minuted, which is unfortunate.
We can quality check the installations that we do in people's homes. So are the installations safe, and have we assessed the person correctly and put in the right equipment to mitigate the risks? Both of those are very easy for us to put in place.
And that last KPI has been written up and is now working.
Yeah, so we haven't actually had the report to tell us to do this yet. That can take 28 days, but we're already on top of making sure that's done. Well, the way Claire intends to do it is she's using Microsoft Forms a lot now, which my staff, when they're on site in someone's home, rather than a written report, there are things that they must do, and before they've ticked a box or written in the text box, it won't allow them to move on to the next part of the installation.
Yeah, good.
And just one last update for you, Chair and colleagues. I mentioned that we had an outstanding £15,000 from an external company. That money is still outstanding, even though I'm chasing it on a weekly basis. They do not dispute that it needs paying. So,
right. But they just haven't paid it.
Just haven't paid it yet. And they're a massive concern. They are a massive organisation with a proper finance team.
So we are reasonably confident it will come in at some stage.
Yeah, I've got no doubt. And the only other update is, so Careline has a 0.5 FTE resource within finance and purchasing. That resource just looks at Careline. It's clearly not been enough over the past year to effectively manage our accounts. So now that the Careline admin team is fully staffed, the plan is to transfer that resource out of finance and purchasing and straight into Careline administration. From there, then we can provide that person with the resource they need and ensure that Careline accounts are kept up to date.
Okay. Before we go on to questions, I should have mentioned page 109 of the agenda. This is the questions and answers that Mark has very helpfully given to the committee. Gareth, do you want to ask him?
Firstly, apologies, Chairman, because I know this is audit and not scrutiny. Right.
Yes.
Do understand that. But I do feel, sorry, perhaps I need to manage myself more, discipline myself more. Perhaps you need to discipline me. But there's two comments I'd like to make, which is more resources, and I accept a scrutiny. But one is what I would appreciate, and perhaps direct me as a member, I would like to know exactly what members should be referring to Careline. Right, because I've had an example recently that really frustrated me. It was over a Saturday and a Sunday, and I did 5 site visits, and I thought there's got to be Careline, and reported it. They were fantastic. You know, the people at the end of the phone I have no problems with, and I asked them to notify these contractors, etc., because I thought I'd need to know: does Careline? Not Careline, but does the district, including Damien's team in particular in this case, do they have examples of where members or a member of the public can report something other than just care to Careline? Does that make sense?
I think that's probably a question that Mark can deal
it
with
now?
outside
Okay.
of this meeting.
But- Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it is resources. I realise that. It's
That's
just.
Morris, you had a question?
No, not at this moment. I'm still thinking.
Okay.
The
Right,
other
well-
thing is I've had very good service from your staff, and I have to say that on Caroline.
Right, thanks for that, Mar. That's very helpful, and I'm sure that you'd be good enough to come back in the future and just give us another update as to where we are with the outstanding issues that you've got. Delphi, turn your mic on.
Yes, Chair, I'm really happy to do that. Just as a last update, the recovery board that was put in place is still in place. So I meet with senior managers on a 2-monthly basis, and we also have a sort of a more operational recovery board that sits behind that.
That's great. Lovely. Thanks very much, Mel. If you need to step away, then please do. Carrying on with Craig's report, the internal audit plan, pages 19 to 23 of your agenda. If I can just talk about on page 21, recycling and waste. And just, I note that the audit is currently unallocated, but will ask the question really, will the assessment of the waste and recycling contract consider the reduction of all waste directly generated by the council and the service suppliers' efforts to reduce TDC's Scope 3 carbon emissions in our climate action plan?
So there's 2 parts to the waste and recycling review. So it will be looking at currently how we deal with waste across the board in terms of not only the public but also our own internal functions and how we dispose of the waste that we create from the work that we do. So we're looking at that side of it as well and looking at the sort of carbon emissions around that. But also on the other side of it, we'll be also asking those questions about any contractors that we work with, what are they going to do to help with that, try and meet that target. So those questions will be asked as part of the audit.
Good. And my other query really is on page 22, Freeport East. It just seems a very early review that we've allocated. What we're actually looking at this stage.
Yeah, so it is quite early. We've put it in the plan because at this stage we don't really know much about sort of how far along it is from an audit perspective, whether or not they do need any support from us. But any review that we do for Freeport East and the board that's so we will be, I suppose, managing the process and how that's set up.
Right. Okay.
So I've had a number of different heads of audits contact me recently, asking the same sort of questions, that in their areas things have progressed a bit further. So they've got some good case studies and information to provide, but a lot of it early on. So it's just a couple. When the time is right, we'll ask those questions and.
No, that's fine. It just when I read it, I thought, hang on a minute, you know, we don't seem to have got there yet.
No,
no, that's fine. I understand that. Going on to the internal audit charter, pages 25 to 31 in your agenda. We obviously have to agree to this. On page 29, just draw the committee's attention to our responsibilities on page 29 as the audit committee. Just draw that to your attention. And on page 30, we have to ensure that the internal audit resources are adequate. We've already discussed that, and Craig has given us some assurance in that regard. So just move on for that. I'll now take you back to page 13 on your agenda. And that is the recommendation, having considered the report and having decided whether it's been sufficiently informed of its contents, the committee is recommended to resolve the contents of the report and its appendices noted and the internal audit charter be approved. Are we happy with that? Good.
Chairman, would you like to add into that requiring Damien and Mark to come back in 6 months' time?
If they would be so kind to do that, I'll be very grateful. Thank you very much. Are we okay with that? Yes. We're voting on page 13 recommendation. Yes, right. Right, so moving on. We're now on agenda item 6, which is career track. Debbie, you're going to take us through that, please?
Yes. So this report is updating Audit Committee on the improvements that have been made against the Ofsted report, which was published in December 2021, following our inspection in November. We last presented you with an update in June 2022, and progress since then has been detailed in the development plan, which was attached. Each aspect on the plan is broken down into 5 areas. They're the 5 areas that inspectors identified where improvements were needed. The development plan will be completed and finished following today's meeting and the Cabinet meeting on Friday next week. They're my last 2 tasks to sign that off. So 3 areas have seen significant progress over the last almost 12 months. The new curriculum, which has been successfully launched and introduced to all adults since June of this year. Each employer that's involved in that process is we're able to produce an individualised curriculum and that of the individual apprentice. So that's something that we weren't doing before. We've introduced OneFile, an e-portfolio and learning software for apprentices and employers. And we have now an established governance board following the Association of Employment and Learning Providers and their governance code. A self-assessment report and quality improvement plan has been completed and will now replace the development plan once it's been signed off. These documents will also be shared with Ofsted. So I am now happy to say that we're extremely confident that the progress that's been made will meet the expectations of Ofsted. They are due their monitoring visit any time now.
Great.
Thank you.
I've read your update, and it does seem that things are sort of well on track. A couple of questions, and you probably answered it already, really, but the roles of the newly recruited staff, I presume at least one of those is the temporary training assessment officer. And I know that's only until December 2022. What happens after then?
Okay, so that post is until December 2022. They will leave, their contract will finish, and they will leave. The person that's been promoted up to undertake a project management role to support the new areas will then revert back to her training assessment role as a team leader and trainer assessor.
Right, okay. So we're confident that we got the resilience in the structure now then, that won't be a problem come December.
Totally confident, yes, no worries at all. The curriculum is written, the OneFile is established and integrated fully. And the project activities that the person was undertaking have now been completed. So we have another couple of months left, and then we can go back to the structure we had before.
Okay. Any questions?
Last time. At the last one, I know that our assistant director reassured us that the governing board, I call it the governing body that you have, was a good governing body. But as a governor myself of a different organisation, I feel a governing body should be preventing you getting a bad report. That's the whole point of it. And I did suggest at that time that although as individuals they may be really good people, perhaps you needed to revisit your governing body and get perhaps a different mix or seat. And how did you do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to respond to that one. Yes, we've undertaken a complete review of the board. So we've got.
Sorry, Anastasia.
We've got our. Is that better? Closer. Is that better? Yes, we have undertaken a complete review of the board, and our portfolio holder for Career Track chairs the board. We've got the chief exec on that board, and we're currently looking at bringing in some external provision as well. So we're looking at some colleagues from Essex County Council who specialise in education joining the board, and also representatives from other councils actually coming onto the board. So you'll see more developments as well over the next few months. We've also got clear terms of reference for that board going forward. Yeah. So we've set up all the complete governance. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Maurice?
For me, after reading this and listening to what you have to say, first thing I'd like to say is that I'm very impressed with the way that you have identified this. I'm full aware of what Ofsted's reports can do to you, especially in confidence. And you have tackled this head on, and just the reassurance that this is all going to be met, and that we'll put this aside and this will never be a problem in the future, because you've already identified what the thought pattern of Ofsted and what they require in the future. So in many ways, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, just finally, having read the initial Ofsted report, there was a huge amount of positive in there. It wasn't all sort of negative, and that, you know, we sit here and think, oh my God, this was terrible. It wasn't like that. There were some issues that needed to be dealt with. As Maurice has said, you've identified those, you've dealt with them, and we're moving on. So I thank you for that. Right, so I take members back to page 34. Top of page 34, the recommendation is that we note the... If you need to step away, then please do. Thank you for your update. Appreciate that. Right, move on to item 7 on your agenda, which is the corporate risk update, and Claire will be taking us through that. Before she does, I'm just going to question one thing as to why she's now someone different. She used to be the risk manager. She's now the assurance and resilience manager. What's happened there?
Following a restructure, my job was looked at, and I've been given additional responsibilities and a new job title.
Thanks for that. I knew that, really. Okay. Is there any, I noticed you've upgraded a couple of risks in your report.
Yes. So it's with the committee to review the document and obviously sign off on the amendments to the document. So there's a few amendments relating to risk scores, and they were around loss of key staff and lack of capacity to recruit in certain areas. And those areas relate to legal, sorry, I've written it down. I remember off the top of your head. Sorry, they relate to planning, HR and legal, as well as other areas which we've already talked about with audit, and other ways of being found to obviously grow your own and do that in a different way, because it's hard to recruit into the area. So the scores
staff, and you've highlighted that in your report, which I'm pleased to see. But certainly with regards to some aspects of what the services that the council provides it, if we lose key staff, then that does put us at serious risk, both reputational and financial. So I'm pleased that you've looked at that. Yeah. The only other things that I just pick up on your report, give us an update on where we are with the cyber attack risk gradings and then our mitigation actions.
The cyber attack issue is relating to obviously our vulnerabilities, and there's always work going on around those vulnerabilities. There's been some work carried out around restricting devices that staff can use in order to look at their emails and things like that. So they can't now have emails on their private mobile phones. They can only have them on work devices that obviously we can update and have control over. And I know there's some work around that ongoing that is mentioned in the document relating to members, which I know you're on. So the point is to try and reduce as many cyber attacks as we can.
Please.
A couple of points really in terms of hopefully giving the committee the assurance, because I think the previous item as well is there's always crossover of work, isn't there, between the audit committee and screening committees, and there is a paper picking up on recruitment and retention, which is equally as important to recruitment, a paper going to the human resources and council tax committee shortly, which hopefully we'll try and tie up, because there's work ongoing. I think it's also worth mentioning the overview and scrutiny cyber review that's upcoming, and it's also important to mention that there is a paper, there's a National Centre for Cyber Security, if that's the right way around, that have introduced a new cyber assessment framework, which is looking for indicators of good practice. So they ask various questions: is the council responding? Has it done this? And it covers a range of issues around your resilience to recovery to everything else. So it's all going through the system as we kind of speak, but hopefully we can bring that back in, so we can bring back those milestones when those reviews are done to give you the assurance as well, rather than being done elsewhere. We're trying to link that back in through either the risk report or through the table of outstanding issues reports. You've got an eye on what's going on elsewhere in the council as well.
Yeah. Now, I'm aware that there's a task and finish group that's going to be looking at it, isn't there? And yeah, but I'm pleased that it's linked in with Claire's report as well. It's something that gets kicked around for a while, but needs to be really sort of upgraded. Yeah, so thanks for that. Right, moving through your risk management framework thing there, the page 73 of the bigger document, it was clearly unreadable, but Ian's had that reprinted now so that we can look at that. There was a glitch in the IT system. Page 86 in your corporate risk register is looking at our financial strategy and balanced budget. Can I ask that Richard gives us an update under his table of outstanding issues on that? Is that all right? Yeah. And page 89 from me concerns with local plan. I appreciate we've got a local plan now, but as we're all aware, the government is changing every rule, it seems, on a daily basis, and just to keep that in mind with regards to what their plans are with regards to planning law, because that may put us under an additional risk at some stage, but I'm sure you'll have your mind on that one.
That's fine, thank you.
Any other questions for Claire on that? No? Right. Well, in that case, then we go way back. Page 49. And the recommendation is that the Audit Committee notes and updates provided to the current corporate risk register. Are we all happy to know that? We are. Thank you very much. Right, moving on then. Agenda item 8, table of outstanding issues. Richard and Karen have prepared the document for us. Can I just sort of make a comment on it? Is Aphrodite on call?
I am. Can you hear me?
Lovely. Thank you. I can't see you, but there's a circle with your name in it. So Oh, there we are.
now?
Hi, good to see you.
Hello.
Thank you very much. When we're looking at the table of outstanding issues, one of which is the external auditors report. And I just want to say something here, that some of the responsibilities of the Audit Committee are to approve the Council's statement of accounts, provide independent assurance on the adequacy of the risk management framework, consider the work and recommendations arising from both internal and external audit reports. Now, the external auditor is now a year behind in providing their view and opinion on our accounts and our financial strategy. I suggest we now need, as a committee, clear advice as to how we can discharge our responsibilities in these circumstances without clear documented reports from our external auditor. Aphrodite, have you got a comment on that for us?
So I attended a committee, I think it was 2 committees ago, and I gave you, I believe, some context and some background as to why we are where we are. A lot of the issues we are experiencing are outside of my control personally, so I am really sorry that we are in the position we're in, and I am trying as hard as I can to help progress your audit, but I just wanted it noted that I am personally sorry for the position we're in. In terms of the work that we have going at the moment, we have substantially, we have completed a substantial amount of work, which is currently going through quality review. The work we have completed has not identified any significant errors or concerns. We had a senior auditor who worked on this particular audit who has now sadly left BDO, which is why we are in the position we're in. Because when I last met you, I had hoped we would be further progressed than what we are now. We have recruited a new member of staff, but as has already been noted by the committee, recruiting people, particularly in the audit market, seems to be nigh on impossible at the moment for whatever reason. We have, however, managed to recruit a new member of staff. She has now started working on this audit. However, being new, she will need a lot of hand-holding and support. So it's just another thing to bear in mind. In the meantime, we have continued to have quarterly liaison meetings with senior officers, including the chief executive, where we discuss current matters. We get updates on what's going on at the council. We receive papers that go to council and cabinet meetings. We've discussed updates on capital strategy and anything else that is going on or any concerns that senior officers have got. So we do remain up to date with matters. And I would like to give you some reassurance, although we haven't issued a report findings, we do keep up to date, and we haven't identified any significant weakness or concerns. If we had, please be assured that we would have shared those with you, as we are required to do as soon as possible. So in terms of discharging your responsibilities, I believe the position we're in should hopefully enable us to bring you a report at the next committee meeting, which will set out what our findings are. And that should hopefully give you some further reassurance. And we are really hoping that we can conclude on the audit in the next few weeks. But like I said, there's the fact that we have a new auditor working on this, which will, I can see, will just take a little bit longer than would otherwise take.
Thank you for that. The difficulty we have as an audit committee, we're not financial experts. We wouldn't pretend to be. And we rely on having our internal audit manager giving us advice and direction. But fundamental to our work is having our external auditor sitting on our shoulder and being there as our voice of conscience and reason and giving us direction. And we've missed that input. And it makes discharging our responsibilities very difficult. Do you understand that?
I completely understand. I entirely understand. Like I said, the work we have done so far, we haven't identified any significant errors with the numbers in the draft statement of accounts. So we hope that when we bring you a completion report, it won't be anything in there that would be of concern.
So are you able to give us some assurance? You may have not have completed your work, but can you give us some assurance with regards to our financial strategies, for example?
In terms of future looking budgets, etc.
Yeah.
I cannot at the moment give you, I mean, I wouldn't be able to give you reassurance of future budgets and forecasts anyway. What our work would cover as part of the work we do on value for money would be to identify any significant weaknesses on those strategies, which, like I say, so far we haven't identified anything that is concerning with those strategies or the arrangements put in place to deliver such strategies.
Okay. Can you give us that in written form so it can be included in the minutes of this meeting?
In terms of I mean, I can provide an email that would essentially say what I've said, if that would be helpful, as opposed to a report.
Well, that will help. If you could do that, then with the agreement of my colleagues on the committee, we'll ensure that is included in the minutes of this meeting. We did receive assurance previously that your report would be available for this meeting. So I would hope that it will be available fairly soon.
Yeah, like I say, unfortunately, circumstances completely out of my control, which are appreciate not your problem, but it's the reason why I'm not able to give you that report at this meeting. But I am doing everything I can to help deliver that report for the next available meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Anastasia? Sorry.
If we did receive the report sooner than perhaps we were even expecting, would we call an extraordinary meeting?
We could do.
If it was sooner than, is what I'm saying.
We certainly
just
could
to
do.
address this. It's just a question. Thank you.
Richard, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely fine. We did it a couple of years ago, didn't we? I think we had a November meeting. So in terms of what Aphrodite has just mentioned there, it does seem as if that November time to have the report, to do the cover report, to respond to those issues, any issues for that. Then obviously we'll talk to you to see if you're happy to call that special meeting, because the next one I think is January, and it'd be nice, and I'm sure we'll all agree, is to, if we can get that done, sorted pre-Christmas, good for everyone's sanity.
Yeah, it'd be good to get it done as soon as possible, obviously.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aphrodite. Appreciate your coming to our meeting. I really do. Much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, back to the main agenda item. Richard, is there anything you specifically want to bring up to our attention? Or Karen? I've got a couple of things. One was Redmond review. Is that now in the long grass?
Thank you, Chair. We provided an update at the last meeting, and obviously there'd been quite a delay before that one, and we're back in that position. So as soon as we do receive any update, we will appraise the committee. But for this one, the long grass.
Yeah, I think it's in the very long grass now. Long grass in another country. Yeah. Right. Richard, I've got one question I want to talk about in your table. I don't know which appendix is on, but that's planning enforcement policy. I think it's on your list, isn't it?
Chair, if I may start, if you're happy with that, Richard. The draft planning policy, chair, members went to the draft planning enforcement policy went to the planning committee on the 1st of September. And that was subsequently adopted by the committee, subject to a few minor changes, which were delegated down and actioned. The planning committee at that meeting also resolved that performance against the planning enforcement policy be reported to the planning committee regularly. So I hope that provides you an update. I do have a few further words from the planning manager, if you're happy for me to relay those, Chair.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. He states that the introduction of the new enforcement policy is a positive step forward to provide a number of targets, priorities, and a harm assessment tool. The members also introduced several measures in their consideration of the policy, including a traffic light system. And it's hoped that these elements will mean a fundamental review of process for the planning enforcement team for the next 6 months, assisted by the task and finish group, which has been set up to review the service. A new permanent team leader in the enforcement team is due to commence in October 2022. Current resources such as the uniform database system are not being utilised to their full potential to manage the high current workload and to ensure historic cases that have superseded by events or otherwise resolved have been properly recorded and closed. So that resource will focus on that. And he's also aware that tendering has high significant concentration of enforcement needs for holiday park homes and holiday developments across the district, and that will take a resource to ensure that the legal position is correctly understood in those cases, with any follow-up action being taken. And that he envisages with that new resource of the enforcement team leader coming through, that they will be fully compliant with the enforcement policy provision 12 months away, given the rate of improvement to systems and processes and the outstanding workload at the moment.
Okay, I've got a couple of concerns about this. One is, as you say, it's the draft planning enforcement policy went to planning committee in September. Was it 1st September? Yeah. I'm intrigued as to why it didn't go to the planning policy committee. I would have thought the planning committee interprets policy, doesn't make policy. So it seems a bit odd to me that it's gone that route and not the other route. But the other thing is, the planning committee put forward certain amendments, which I understand, rightly or wrongly, have not been incorporated and fully approved. So it's still outstanding. It's still not a firm planning enforcement policy. It's still waiting to be amended and go back, presumably, to the planning committee. So we're still in that situation where it's not a formal policy. I was able to look at the planning enforcement database at the beginning of June, and there were 198 listed complaints with no updates going back 2 years. The database is not fit for purpose. I suggest that this requires a specific audit of what we're doing. I would also like to know that the establishment of that department will be adequate and provide effective implementation of the policy when it's eventually adopted. So I do have some concerns. Although planning enforcement is a risk-based discretionary power, it's still a financial and considerable reputational risk due to lack of planning enforcement. We've had examples in the past where we've failed to do things and it's cost the council money. Reputational risk around failing to enforce planning issues is considerable. And I think we need some reassurance that this planning enforcement policy has been properly adopted after amendment and the team working with it are adequate and the policy is being adequately effected. Any comments on that?
If I can come, yeah, I mean, if I can come back on that and say from a pragmatic perspective, you're happy that we take that, your comment, the committee's comments back to the council's management team and we'll include the portfolio holder. And I think what we do is we can respond in the interim. We could say to you now, well, put it on the action plan and we'll come back to you in January. I think given the points you've raised there, if you're happy for us to take that back and we can respond as soon as we can following those discussions.
Yeah. Maurice.
As you're aware that I sit on the planning committee and was a part of the this decision-making process. Am I allowed to speak on that?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. When we had the policy before us, this was questioned why that this would become before us not being a policy-making committee, and that was indeed we had this before us. So we had amendments that to go on to this, Chair. And the idea being it, and there's quite an insistence at one stage that this was brought back to us so we could see those back in place, because it was a pointless operation for us to approve it and then making amendments and then leaving them off. It would be going nowhere. So I do agree entirely with what the Chair has put forward now. We need to have this looked at. Reputational is so important, but there are areas within enforcement which have proven themselves to have extremely powerful teeth and have delivered beyond what's required of them. So there are issues, but I believe a change of staff is imminent. I have picked that up. I could be wrong. So that I do believe that this should be looked at very carefully, and it becomes very much a part of what we do. As I say, financially and reputationally, I believe it to be a big risk for us.
Okay.
I don't have any involvement with planning. It's something I've avoided for 11 years, I have to admit, having been offered the deputy chairman of planning 2 days after being elected as a councillor. But it's a topic I've clearly avoided. But I have to say, I do use enforcement quite a lot in my ward. I think they've got 5 cases at the moment, and I endorse absolutely what you say. Everything, the staffing needs looking at. We need consistency of staffing, because I've had a case recently where it's been embarrassing because they've had to admit that the council planning department made a mess in 1982, which has really had a serious impact on 3 residents in my ward now, mentally and physically. So consistency in staffing is crucial, and adequate number of staffing is crucial. For, as Maurice has mentioned, Councillor thing is mentioned, it's about our reputation, really, that we, because that before I ever became a councillor, one of the areas that was highly criticised when we had the auditors annually reporting was there was a serious concern about our planning. Has always been. I think we've moved forward and made progress, but I think there's still room for progress there, and enforcement is one of the areas I would endorse absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Just really for information, so the planning enforcement issues you mentioned, 198, they came to light after corporate enforcement meeting, and portfolio holders for planning and housing have requested a regular monthly meeting with myself, the director for planning, with a list to work through that list and see how we address those issues. So really just for information, so you're aware some of that work is going on in the background.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Richard, any other issues from your or Karen's report that you wanted to highlight?
Chairman, you mentioned about finance earlier on. Did you want me to, because it was in a risk register, wasn't it, the financial strategy? But I'm not sure if that was your question, if I misunderstood that.
No.
It was about where we are with that. As we speak, because Ian's going to be chasing me in about half an hour, we're doing a financial update report to Cabinet on the 7th of October, which responds to the very challenging national global market that we find ourselves in. We did do a forecast a little while ago, just as it was finished, to just rip it up. It had no value at all because we moved on so fast. So I think we've got to look at a slightly different approach for the next 1 to 2 years, and then give ourselves that time, in fairness, and to give us that time to reflect. So hopefully you're happy to. I think a lot of hopefully the response and how we're dealing with it is going to be set out in that report, which will be out publicly this afternoon or tomorrow. So it'll be on the Cabinet agenda shortly.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else got anything?
I have something, Chair.
Have you?
Yes, I have.
Oh, right.
May I say it?
Well, quickly. Yeah.
I should be quick. First thing I'd like to
Is
make it an
because we haven't finished an item agenda.
Oh, I see. Well, in that case, then finish that.
Right, okay. Right, well, I'll take you back to page 97. Recommendation is that the committee notes and endorses the progress against the actions set out in appendices A to B. Are we happy to note that?
Agreed.
We are. That's done. Right, effectively then, the meeting is now at an end. Morris, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. One, do you think it would be possible that we could just jack the sound up a tiny bit for future meetings? Sitting with a matey behind us, it's buzzing away. I find it quite difficult. I don't know if anybody else found it hard to hear today. Okay.
Anyway, as we're discussing matters outside of the agenda, can I just say the meeting concluded? Thank you very much. And the live feed can discontinue.
Charles, what's a between we're going to get in this because I think we could.
Live feed ended. Yep. Okay.
Ricky, may I have a quick word with you, sir?